In the quiet corners of our world, beneath layers of sand and stone, lie secrets that could shatter everything you believe about human history. For 5,000 years, 1.4 billion people have carried a story so vast and so complex that the world has never truly listened. We are surrounded by ancient structures that defy our understanding, technologies that shouldn't exist, and knowledge so advanced it whispers of impossible truths. Today, the shadows of the past come alive. Today, we descend into the depths of civilization's greatest mysteries to uncover what was meant to stay hidden. Here on Echoed Reality, we don't just tell history, we uncover what was meant to stay hidden. And what you're about to discover will leave you questioning the very foundation of human existence. The journey into the unknown begins now. In the quiet corners of our world, beneath layers of sand and stone, lie secrets that whisper of a past far stranger than we've been taught to believe. The history we learn in classrooms, the timelines printed in textbooks, the accepted narratives of human civilization, they tell us a story of linear progression, of primitive beginnings slowly evolving into the modern world we know today. But what if that story is incomplete? What if there are chapters missing, pages torn out, entire volumes hidden away in the shadows of time? We stand at the edge of the 21st century, masters of technology, conquerors of space. Yet when we turn our gaze backward, we find ourselves confronted by achievements that seem to mock our understanding. Ancient structures that defy our engineering capabilities, technologies that shouldn't exist in their time periods, knowledge so advanced, so precise that it raises a disturbing question. Were our ancestors far more sophisticated than we ever imagined, or did they receive help from somewhere or someone we cannot yet comprehend? The Great Pyramids of Giza rise from the Egyptian desert like monuments to an impossible dream. For thousands of years they've stood there, silent sentinels guarding secrets that may never be fully understood. We're told they were built as tombs for pharaohs, constructed by armies of workers using copper tools and wooden sledges. Yet when engineers and architects examine these structures with modern eyes, they find precision that troubles them deeply. The Great Pyramid, built supposedly around 2500 BC, contains approximately 2.3 million limestone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 70 tons. The four sides of the base are aligned to the cardinal points of the compass with an accuracy of better than 4 minutes of arc. The margin of error is less than 0.058%. To achieve this level of precision today, we would need laser-guided equipment and computer calculations. The ancient Egyptians, we're told, accomplished this with primitive tools and basic mathematics. The pyramid's dimensions encode mathematical constants that wouldn't be formally discovered for thousands of years. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its height equals 2 pi, the fundamental constant relating a circle's circumference to its diameter. This appears in a structure allegedly built over 1,000 years before the Greek mathematician Archimedes began his work on circular geometry. Some call this coincidence, others see the fingerprints of knowledge that shouldn't exist. But the mystery deepens when we examine the construction itself. The stones fit together with such precision that you cannot slide a razor blade between them. No mortar was used, yet the structure has withstood earthquakes, sandstorms, and the erosive force of millennia. Modern attempts to replicate even small sections of pyramid construction using ancient methods have failed repeatedly. The logistics alone present an impossible puzzle. To complete the Great Pyramid in the 20-year reign of Pharaoh Khufu, workers would have needed to set one block every 2.5 minutes, working without pause, day and night for 2 decades. This doesn't account for the time needed to quarry, transport, and precisely shape each massive stone. Even more perplexing is the internal structure. The Grand Gallery, rising at a steep angle into the heart of the pyramid, features corbelled walls that showcase architectural sophistication rivaling anything built until the Renaissance. The King's Chamber contains granite blocks weighing up to 80 tons, transported from quarries 500 miles away and lifted hundreds of feet into the air, then maneuvered through narrow passages and positioned with mathematical precision. Mainstream archaeology offers theories, but theories aren't answers, and the gaps in our understanding grow wider the deeper we investigate. Across the world, in the dense jungles of Peru, another ancient mystery rises from the mountains. Machu Picchu, the lost city of the Incas, perches on a ridge between two peaks, 8,000 feet above sea level. But Machu Picchu, as impressive as it is, represents only the surface of South America's ancient enigmas. In the highlands near Lake Titicaca, the ruins of Pumapunku present a challenge to everything we think we know about ancient construction techniques. Pumapunku, part of a larger complex at Tiwanaku, contains stone blocks that appear to have been machined with tools we associate only with modern manufacturing. The precision cuts, the perfect right angles, the intricate interlocking designs, they all suggest the use of advanced technology. Some blocks feature what can only be described as drill holes, perfectly circular and extending deep into the hardest stone. The surfaces are flat to within fractions of a millimeter. The corners meet at exactly 90 degrees. This is andesite and diorite, some of the hardest stone on Earth, ranking high on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness. To shape these stones, ancient craftsmen would have needed tools harder than the stone itself. Copper tools, what the pre-Columbian civilizations are supposed to have used, would be useless against such material. Even modern diamond-tip tools struggle with these stone types. Yet here we find blocks weighing over 100 tons, carved with such precision that they fit together like pieces of a three-dimensional puzzle, without mortar, without gaps, defying both time and explanation. The site's age remains disputed. Mainstream archaeology dates it to around 500 AD, but geological evidence suggests it could be far older. Some researchers point to water erosion patterns that would require the site to have existed during a time when the region's climate was dramatically different, potentially pushing its origins back thousands of years into prehistory. The Inca themselves, when asked about Tiwanaku by Spanish conquistadors, said they didn't build it. They claimed it was already ancient when their civilization arose, built by the gods in a single night. If we venture to the other side of the world, to the islands of Japan, we find mystery beneath the waves. Off the coast of Yonaguni Island, divers discovered in 1986 what appears to be a massive submerged structure. The Yonaguni Monument, as it's now called, features what look like terraced platforms, straight edges, right angles, and even what some interpret as a carved face. The structure stretches nearly 300 feet along its longest axis and rises from a depth of over 80 feet. Geologists debate whether this is natural formation or a man-made structure. Those who argue for natural origins point to the layered sandstone in the area, which can fracture along straight lines. But those who believe it's artificial point to features that seem impossible to explain through geology alone. There are parallel trenches that look like roads. There are holes that appear deliberately drilled. There are stones that seem to have been moved and positioned. The eye-face shows symmetry that defies natural erosion patterns. If the Yonaguni monument is artificial, its implications are staggering. The structure lies at a depth that suggests it was built when sea levels were significantly lower than today. The last time the area could have been above water was at the end of the last ice age, over 10,000 years ago. This predates the earliest known civilizations by thousands of years. It would mean that sophisticated stoneworking cultures existed long before Sumer, before Egypt, before any society that appears in our history books. It would mean we've fundamentally misunderstood the timeline of human development. Ancient texts texts offer another window into mysteries that mainstream history struggles to explain. The Mahabharata and the Ramayana, epic poems from ancient India, contain descriptions that make modern readers pause and wonder. They speak of Vimanas, flying machines that could travel through the sky at incredible speeds. The descriptions aren't vague or mythological in nature. They contain technical details about construction, propulsion, and navigation. One ancient text, the Vimanika Shastra, allegedly written by the sage Bharadvaja, provides what reads like an instruction manual for building and operating various types of aerial vehicles.
These texts describe weapons of terrifying power. The Brahmastra, mentioned in multiple ancient Indian sources, is said to be capable of destroying entire armies, leaving the land barren and poisoned for years afterward. The descriptions bear an unsettling resemblance to nuclear weapons. Some passages speak of a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, creating a column of smoke and flame bright as 10,000 suns. The aftermath includes the falling of hair and nails, the weakening of survivors, food becoming poisoned. These are symptoms consistent with radiation exposure. Archaeological sites in India show strange evidence that some researchers interpret as support for these ancient accounts. Mohenjo-daro, an ancient city of the Indus Valley civilization, contains skeletons with elevated levels of radiation. Some areas of the ruins show signs of intense heat, hot enough to vitrify stone and pottery. The bodies were found scattered in the streets, as if death came suddenly. No signs of violence appear on the remains, no indication of conquest or battle. Whatever destroyed this city 4,000 years ago did so swiftly and with tremendous force. In ancient Egypt, the Temple of Dendera contains something that has puzzled researchers for over a century. Carved into the walls are reliefs that look remarkably like modern light bulbs. The images show what appear to be elongated glass containers with serpentine filaments inside, connected to what could be interpreted as power sources. Egyptologists insist these are symbolic representations of mythological scenes, that the serpents represent the god Harsamtus emerging from a lotus flower. But electrical engineers who've examined the carvings see something different. They see designs that mirror the basic principles of electrical discharge tubes. Some researchers have even built working models based on these ancient carvings, using materials available to the ancient Egyptians. These reproductions produce light, operating on principles similar to modern fluorescent bulbs. If the ancient Egyptians possessed electrical lighting, it would explain many puzzling aspects of their civilization. The interiors of pyramids and tombs show no trace of soot from torches. The intricate carvings and paintings found in deep, narrow passages would have required excellent light to create, yet no evidence of fire or smoke exists in these spaces. The Baghdad Battery, discovered in 1936 near Baghdad, presents another technological anomaly. Dating to around 200 BC, this artifact consists of a clay jar containing a copper cylinder, inside of which was an iron rod. When filled with an acidic solution like vinegar or wine, the device generates an electrical current. Mainstream archaeology suggests it was used for electroplating, coating objects with thin layers of precious metals. But if the Parthians who made it understood electrochemistry 2,000 years ago, what else did they know? What other technologies have been lost to time, their traces eroded away or misidentified in museum collections? The ancient Greeks left behind descriptions of devices that seem impossible for their era. The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901, is an astronomical calculator of stunning complexity. Dating to around 100 BC, this bronze device contains over 30 interlocking gears, each precisely cut and positioned. It could predict eclipses, track the movements of planets, calculate the timing of the Olympic Games, and model the irregular orbit of the Moon. Nothing approaching its sophistication would appear again in human history until the development of astronomical clocks in the 14th century, over 1,000 years later. For decades, the mechanism sat in a museum, its importance unrecognized, its corroded remains appearing as nothing more than a lump of ancient bronze. Only when researchers examined it with X-ray technology did they discover the intricate gearing hidden within. The precision of the manufacturing astounds modern engineers. The gear teeth are cut with a level of accuracy that would require advanced tools and mathematical knowledge. The device demonstrates an understanding of epicyclic gearing that historians thought was invented in the Renaissance. Whoever built the Antikythera mechanism possessed knowledge that vanished from the world, not to resurface for over a millennium. But perhaps the most disturbing possibility is that ancient peoples possessed knowledge not just of engineering and astronomy, but of the Earth in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The Piri Reis map, created by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis in 1513, shows the coastline of Antarctica with remarkable accuracy. This alone might not seem unusual, except for one problem. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, over 300 years after the map was drawn. Even more puzzling, the map appears to show the coastline as it exists beneath the ice, details that weren't revealed until seismic surveys in 1949. Piri Reis claimed he compiled his map from over 20 source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. If these source maps were accurate, it means someone, at some point in ancient history, mapped Antarctica when it was free of ice. The continent has been covered in ice for millions of years according to conventional geology. Yet alternative researchers point to evidence suggesting the ice sheet might be much younger, that perhaps 12,000 years ago, parts of Antarctica were ice-free and possibly inhabited. The implications challenge everything we believe about ancient history and climate change. Other ancient maps show similar anomalies. The Orientaeus Finus map of 1531 shows the entire continent of Antarctica with rivers and mountains. The Buash map of 1737 shows Antarctica as two separate land masses connected by a narrow channel, exactly as it exists beneath the ice. How could 18th century cartographers know this? How could they depict geographical features that wouldn't be confirmed until the International Geophysical Year of 1957? Some ancient maps show land masses in the Atlantic Ocean where none exist today. Plato wrote about Atlantis, describing it as a sophisticated maritime civilization that sank beneath the waves 9,000 years before his time. He claimed his account came from Egyptian priests who maintained records of events long forgotten by other peoples. Most scholars dismiss Atlantis as allegory, a philosophical device Plato used to make points about ideal societies. But some researchers take it literally, noting that Plato provided specific details about Atlantis's location, size, and culture, details that seem odd if he simply invented the story. Could a sophisticated civilization have existed during the last ice age and been destroyed by rising sea levels as the ice sheets melted? Sea levels rose over 300 feet as the ice age ended, drowning coastlines around the world. Any coastal civilizations from that era would now lie beneath hundreds of feet of water. Marine archaeology has barely scratched the surface of what might lie on the ocean floor. Recent discoveries of submerged structures off the coasts of India, Cuba, and elsewhere suggest that ancient cities may indeed rest beneath the waves, waiting to rewrite our understanding of history. The Göbekli Tepe site in Turkey has already rewritten significant portions of what we thought we knew about prehistoric humans. Discovered in the 1990s, this complex of massive stone pillars and carved reliefs dates to around 9,500 BC, making it over 11,000 years old. This predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the pyramids by 7,000 years. It's older than pottery, older than metallurgy, older than writing, older than agriculture itself, according to the standard historical timeline. Yet Göbekli Tepe demonstrates a level of organization and artistic sophistication that shouldn't exist in this time period. The T-shaped pillars weigh up to 16 tons each. They're arranged in circular patterns, covered with intricate carvings of animals, foxes, lions, scorpions, vultures, and snakes, rendered with remarkable skill. The builders shaped and transported these massive stones using technology that, according to our understanding of the era, didn't exist. This was supposed to be a time of small hunter-gatherer bands, people with no permanent settlements, no complex social structures, no reason or ability to create monumental architecture. The site was deliberately buried sometime around 8000 BC. Someone, for reasons we can't determine, made the decision to completely cover this massive complex with earth, preserving it for 11,000 years. Why would they do this? What knowledge were they trying to hide or protect? Göbekli Tepe suggests that our entire understanding of human development is wrong, that complex civilization existed thousands of years earlier than we believed possible, and that something happened to destroy or force the abandonment of that civilization. In Bolivia, the Fuente Magna Bowl and the Pocotia Monument present linguistic mysteries that challenge our understanding of ancient contact between civilizations. These artifacts, discovered near Lake Titicaca, contain inscriptions that appear to be in Sumerian cuneiform, one of the world's oldest writing systems, developed in ancient Mesopotamia around 3000 BC. But these items were found in South America, thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean. How did Sumerian writing end up in pre-Columbian Bolivia? Mainstream archaeology largely ignores these artifacts, suggesting they're hoaxes or misidentifications. But if they're genuine, they imply that ancient peoples were capable of transoceanic travel long before Columbus, that contact between civilizations separated by vast oceans occurred in prehistory. The possibility of ancient transoceanic travel finds support in unexpected places. Cocaine and tobacco, plants native only to the Americas, have been found in Egyptian mummies. Nicotine and cocaine metabolites were detected in the hair and tissue of mummies dating back over 3,000 years. This should be impossible. These substances could not have been present in Egypt unless someone brought them from the Americas. When these findings were first published in the 1990s, they were dismissed and ridiculed, but subsequent testing by multiple independent laboratories confirmed the results. The evidence exists, but explaining it requires accepting that ancient peoples could cross the Atlantic Ocean thousands of years before such voyages were thought possible. Mysterious ancient structures dot the landscape of Malta, another Mediterranean island with more questions than answers. The megalithic temples of Malta date back over 5,000 years, making them among the oldest freestanding structures on Earth. They predate the Egyptian pyramids and Stonehenge. These aren't crude stone piles, but sophisticated buildings with complex architecture, curved walls, decorative carvings, and astronomical alignments. Some of the stones weigh over 20 tons. The builders achieved remarkable acoustic properties in some chambers, with natural resonance frequencies that some researchers believe were intentionally designed for ritual purposes. The hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, an underground temple complex in Malta, was carved directly into solid limestone. It extends over 3 levels, descending approximately 35 feet underground, and consists of interconnecting halls and chambers. The precision of the carving is extraordinary, especially considering it was accomplished using stone tools. One chamber, known as the Oracle Room, has acoustic properties that amplify sounds at certain frequencies while dampening others. A male voice speaking at around 100 Hz creates resonance throughout the structure. Some visitors report experiencing altered states of consciousness in this chamber, sensations of vibration in the body, even hallucinations. Was this intentional? Did the ancient builders understand sound and its effects on human consciousness in ways we're only beginning to rediscover? The stone circles of Britain and Europe present their own enduring mysteries. Stonehenge, the most famous, consists of massive sarsen stones weighing up to 25 tons and blue stones that were transported from the Preseli Hills in Wales, over 150 miles away. Why would Neolithic people go to such extraordinary effort? The standard explanation is that Stonehenge was a ceremonial site, possibly used for astronomical observations and seasonal celebrations. But this seems inadequate to explain the immense labor required for its construction. Recent discoveries suggest Stonehenge may have been part of a much larger complex of monuments and structures, a sacred landscape used by ancient peoples for purposes we can only guess at. Across Britain, standing stones, stone circles, and ancient earthworks form patterns that some researchers interpret as a sophisticated network. Ley lines, first proposed by Alfred Watkins in the 1920s, are alleged alignments connecting ancient sites across the landscape. But some alignments are too precise to easily dismiss. Sites separated by hundreds of miles fall into geometric relationships that suggest intentional planning on a massive scale. In the Americas, the Nazca lines of Peru present a mystery visible only from the air. These massive geoglyphs, created between 500 BC and 500 AD, cover nearly 200 square miles of desert. They depict animals, plants, and geometric shapes, some over 600 feet long. The lines were created by removing the reddish pebbles covering the desert floor to reveal the lighter ground beneath. A simple technique, yet one that produced images of stunning complexity and precision. The shapes remain clearly visible because of the extreme dryness of the region, which has preserved them for over 2,000 years. But here's the puzzle. These images can only be fully appreciated from the air. Standing on the ground, you see only lines and cleared areas. From high above, you see monkeys, spiders, hummingbirds, and other figures rendered with elegant precision. Why would the Nazca people create images they could never fully view themselves? Some researchers suggest they were meant for the gods, offerings visible only from the heavens. Others propose more controversial theories, suggesting the Nazca people had access to hot air balloons or other primitive aircraft. Burn pits found in the area could have generated the hot air needed for such balloons, and ancient textiles discovered nearby would have been suitable for balloon construction. Evidence of ancient flight, if it existed, has been found in unexpected places. In Egypt, a wooden model discovered in a tomb at Saqqara in 1898 was catalogued as a bird figurine and placed in storage. Decades later, in 1969, an archaeologist noticed something unusual about the object. It has a vertical tail fin instead of a horizontal one. It has a wing shape that resembles modern glider designs. When aeronautical engineers examined it, they determined that the model has the correct proportions and aerodynamics to actually fly. Modern replicas, built to the exact specifications of the ancient model, glide smoothly and remain stable in flight. Dating around 200 BC, this object suggests that ancient Egyptians understood aerodynamic principles that wouldn't be formally described until the 20th century. In Central America, a different mystery has puzzled researchers for decades. Small golden figurines dating to around 1000 AD and attributed to various pre-Columbian cultures look remarkably like modern jet aircraft. These artifacts, dismissed by mainstream archaeologists as zoomorphic representations of birds or insects, have wings, a fuselage, vertical and horizontal tail fins, even what appears to be a cockpit. Aeronautical engineers who've examined photographs of these objects note that they resemble specific types of modern aircraft, particularly delta-wing fighters. Scale models built from these designs are not only flight-worthy, but perform extremely well, executing maneuvers that would be impossible for a bird or insect to perform. Could ancient peoples have witnessed aircraft, either of their own construction or from another source, and created these models as records of what they'd seen? The alternative, that these shapes arose coincidentally and happened to match modern aeronautical design, seems statistically implausible. Yet accepting that ancient civilizations possessed flight technology requires us to completely revise our understanding of history, to accept that advanced technologies existed in antiquity and were subsequently lost. The concept of lost technology appears throughout ancient literature. The Library of Alexandria, destroyed in a series of fires and conflicts between the 1st and 7th centuries AD, contained hundreds of thousands of scrolls, representing the accumulated knowledge of the ancient world. What was lost when those scrolls burned? What discoveries, what inventions, what understanding of the universe vanished forever into smoke and ash? We know from surviving references that the library contained works on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering that have never been recovered. Ancient scholars who visited the library described texts that contained knowledge lost to later generations.
Greek fire, the devastating incendiary weapon used by the Byzantine Empire, represents a clear example of lost technology. First used in the 7th century AD, Greek fire was a liquid that ignited on contact with water and couldn't be extinguished by conventional means. Ships coated with Greek fire would burn even while sinking. The weapon gave the Byzantine Empire a crucial military advantage for centuries. The formula was so closely guarded that it was known only to the ruling emperor and a handful of trusted technicians. When the empire fell, the secret of Greek fire died with it. Despite centuries of research, we still don't know exactly what Greek fire was or how it was made. We've created approximations, but the original formula remains lost. Damascus steel, forged in the Near East between 300 and 1700 AD, possessed properties that modern metallurgists struggle to replicate. Blades made from Damascus steel were extraordinarily strong and flexible, able to hold an edge that could cut through lesser blades and even stone. The steel had a distinctive wavy pattern, evidence of the unique crystalline structure created during forging. The technique was lost in the 18th century, possibly because the specific ore sources were depleted. For centuries, metallurgists have attempted to rediscover the process. Only recently, using electron microscopy and modern material science, have researchers begun to understand what made Damascus steel special. The presence of carbon nanotubes and carbide nanowires, structures we associate with cutting-edge material science, yet medieval blacksmiths created them through techniques they couldn't possibly have understood on a molecular level. Roman concrete has outlasted its modern equivalent by over 2,000 years. Structures like the Pantheon in Rome, with its massive, unreinforced concrete dome, have stood for nearly 2 millennia with minimal damage. Modern concrete structures begin deteriorating within decades. The Romans achieved this durability through a specific mixture of volcanic ash, lime, and seawater that creates a chemical reaction resulting in extraordinarily stable concrete. The exact process was lost after the fall of the Roman Empire. Modern researchers only recently determined what made Roman concrete superior. It continues to strengthen over time as seawater reacts with the volcanic ash to create interlocking mineral structures. We're rediscovering ancient knowledge that was commonplace 2,000 years ago. But some ancient mysteries suggest not just lost technology, but impossible knowledge. The Dogon people of Mali in West Africa possess astronomical knowledge they shouldn't have. Their mythology describes Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, as part of a binary system. They knew that Sirius has a companion star, invisible to the naked eye, that orbits Sirius every 50 years. This is accurate. Sirius B exists, orbits Sirius A, and completes an orbit in approximately 50 years. But Sirius B wasn't discovered by Western astronomy until 1862, when telescope technology advanced sufficiently to detect it. The Dogon, without telescopes, without modern astronomical instruments, somehow knew about this invisible companion star. They even knew that it was incredibly dense, made of matter heavier than anything on Earth, an accurate description of a white dwarf star. When anthropologists first documented Dogon astronomical knowledge in the 1930s and 40s, they were puzzled. How could a pre-industrial African society possess information that required advanced telescopes to obtain? The Dogon themselves said the knowledge was given to them by the Nomo, amphibious beings who came from the Sirius system long ago. Skeptics suggest the Dogon learned about Sirius B from Western visitors and incorporated it into their mythology. But the Dogon knowledge appears in their oldest traditions, in symbols and ceremonies that predate contact with Western astronomers. The mystery remains unresolved. Ancient maps of the moon present another impossible enigma. In the archives of ancient Chinese astronomy, there are drawings that show features of the far side, the side of the moon that always faces away from Earth. These drawings shouldn't exist. The moon is tidally locked to Earth, meaning the same side always faces us. The far side of the moon remained completely unknown until Soviet spacecraft photographed it in 1959. Yet some ancient charts appear to show craters and features that exist only on the far side. Either these are extraordinary coincidences, or ancient astronomers had ways of observing the moon that we don't understand. The precision of ancient astronomy troubles those who examine it closely. The Mayan calendar, developed by a civilization that flourished in Central America between 2000 BC and 1500 AD, tracked time with extraordinary accuracy. The Mayans calculated the solar year as 365.2420 days long. Modern measurements, using atomic clocks and satellite observations, determine the solar year to be 365.2422 days. The Mayan calculation, achieved without modern instruments, was accurate to within 2/10,000ths of a day. They tracked the cycles of Venus with similar precision, noting that 5 Venus cycles equal 8 Earth years, a relationship accurate to within 2 hours over a period of decades. The Mayan long count calendar, which famously completed a great cycle in 2012, spans over 5,000 years. The calendar doesn't just mark days, but tracks vast cosmic cycles, incorporating the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that takes 26,000 years to complete. The Mayans knew about precession and built it into their calendar systems. They understood that we live in a universe of cycles where astronomical events repeat in patterns that span millennia. This knowledge required centuries of careful observation and sophisticated mathematics. Yet mainstream history tells us the Maya were a primitive society that practiced human sacrifice and warfare. Both things can be true, but the contradiction troubles those who think deeply about what it means. In Egypt, the alignment of the pyramids at Giza has sparked decades of controversy. The 3 pyramids, built supposedly for the pharaohs Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, align almost perfectly with the 3 stars of Orion's belt. This correlation was first popularized by Robert Bauval in the 1990s, though Egyptian mythology has always associated Orion with Osiris, god of the afterlife. The Nile River's position relative to the pyramids matches the Milky Way's position relative to Orion's belt. The alignment isn't perfect in the current era, but computer simulations show that in 10,500 BC, the alignment would have been precise. This date, 12,000 years ago, matches the astronomical alignment encoded in the Sphinx, according to some researchers who point to water erosion on the Sphinx, suggesting it predates the traditionally accepted construction date by thousands of years. Geologists examining the Sphinx have noted that the erosion patterns on its body are consistent with water weathering, not wind and sand. For the Sphinx to show water erosion, it would need to have been exposed to significant rainfall. The Egyptian climate has been arid for thousands of years. The last time the region experienced enough rainfall to cause such erosion was before 7000 BC, possibly as early as 10,000 BC. If the Sphinx dates to this earlier period, it predates Egyptian civilization itself. It would mean the structure was built by an unknown culture, later discovered and claimed by the dynastic Egyptians. The implications cascade through everything we think we know about human history. Ancient texts described catastrophes that destroyed earlier civilizations. Plato's account of Atlantis mentions that the island sank in a single day and night of catastrophe. Ancient Indian texts speak of cycles of creation and destruction, vast ages where civilizations rise and fall. The Bible describes the flood of Noah, a deluge that covered the earth. Flood myths appear in the mythologies of cultures worldwide, from Mesopotamia to China, from Australia to the Americas. The ubiquity of these stories suggests they preserve memory of real events, catastrophes that reshaped the world in prehistory.
Geological evidence supports the occurrence of massive flooding at the end of the last ice age. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes that around 10,800 BC, the Earth was struck by fragments of a disintegrating comet. The impacts would have caused widespread destruction, triggered massive wildfires, and led to abrupt climate change. Ice core data shows sudden temperature drops and elevated levels of platinum and iridium, elements rare on Earth but common in asteroids and comets. The hypothesis remains controversial, but evidence continues to accumulate. If such an impact occurred, it would have devastated any existing civilizations, potentially setting human development back thousands of years. Evidence of ancient cataclysm appears in unexpected places. The mammoth remains frozen in Siberian permafrost show signs of sudden death. Some mammoths were found with undigested food still in their stomachs, suggesting they died so quickly they didn't have time to digest their last meal. The food found in their stomachs includes plant species that don't grow in Siberia's current climate, indicating that the region was warmer when these animals died. Something caused a rapid change, freezing the mammoths in place and preserving them for thousands of years. The conventional explanation is gradual climate change at the end of the Ice Age, but this doesn't explain the apparent suddenness of death or the flash freezing preservation. In the Grand Canyon and other locations in North America, researchers have found what appear to be impact markers in rock layers dating to the Younger Dryas period. These include shocked quartz, microspherules, and nanodiamonds, all consistent with cosmic impact. Charcoal layers indicate massive wildfires burning across the continent. Megafauna extinctions in North America occur right at this boundary. Mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats, and giant ground sloths all vanished in a geological instant. The Clovis culture, the earliest well-documented human culture in North America, disappears from the archaeological record at the same time. Some event reshaped the continent 12,000 years ago, an event that coincides with the flood myths and destruction stories preserved in ancient memory. Could an advanced civilization have existed before this cataclysm and been destroyed by it? The evidence is circumstantial, but intriguing. If we imagine a sophisticated maritime civilization occupying the coastlines during the last ice age, when sea levels were 300 feet lower, every trace of that civilization would now be underwater. Their cities, their monuments, their evidence of existence, all drowned beneath the rising oceans. Only their knowledge might survive, preserved in the myths and legends of the peoples who came after, encoded in megalithic structures built on high ground, whispered in ancient texts that speak of gods who brought civilization to primitive humans. This is the ancient astronaut theory in one of its many forms, the idea that human civilization was influenced or guided by visitors from elsewhere. Erich von Däniken popularized these ideas in the 1960s, suggesting that ancient texts describing gods descending from the sky were actually describing encounters with extraterrestrial visitors. The theory has been widely criticized and ridiculed by mainstream academics, and much of the criticism is justified. Von Däniken and others who followed him often misrepresented evidence, ignored contradictory data, and jumped to conclusions without proper support. But dismissing the entire concept because of flawed execution doesn't address the underlying questions. Ancient texts do describe beings with advanced technology who came from the sky. The book of Ezekiel in the Bible contains a vision that some interpret as a description of a spacecraft, wheels within wheels, beings of fire, a throne that moves through the air. Ancient Sumerian texts speak of the Anunnaki, beings who came from the sky and taught humans the arts of civilization. The ancient Indian epics describe gods who fly through the air in Vimanas and wield weapons of terrible power. Japanese legends speak of the Kappa, beings who came from the sky and lived in the water. African tribes tell stories of sky beings who brought knowledge. The consistency of these accounts across cultures that had no contact with each other is remarkable. The alternative explanations are that humans have consistent psychological patterns that produce similar mythological archetypes, or that all these cultures are describing natural phenomena like lightning, meteors, and eclipses in supernatural terms. Both explanations have merit, but they don't easily account for the technical details in some ancient texts, the specific descriptions of machinery and technology that align uncannily with modern devices. When the ancient Indian Vimanas Shastra describes mercury vortex engines and electric propulsion systems, we can dismiss it as fantasy, or we can wonder if the text preserves memory of actual technology, whether developed independently by ancient peoples or acquired from another source. The Sumerian King List, an ancient text recorded on clay tablets, presents another chronological puzzle. The list chronicles the reigns of kings in ancient Mesopotamia, but the early entries describe reigns of impossible length, kings who ruled for 30,000 years, 40,000 years. After the flood, the list says, kingship descended from the heavens again, and the reigns become somewhat shorter, though still exceeding normal human lifespans. Only in the historical period do the reign lengths become realistic. Scholars interpret the early entries as mythological, but the precision with which these numbers are recorded suggests the Sumerians considered them factual. Were they measuring time differently? Were they recording dynasties rather than individuals? Or were they preserving memories of a time when different rules applied, when beings with far longer lifespans ruled over early humanity? Genetic research has revealed mysteries of its own. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, appeared in the archaeological record around 300,000 years ago, evolving from earlier hominid species. But there's a curious genetic puzzle. The human genome contains sequences that seem to have been suddenly inserted rather than gradually evolved. Some geneticists point to what they call genetic bottlenecks, periods when the human population
population dropped dramatically, reducing genetic diversity. But other researchers note anomalies that are harder to explain through conventional evolutionary theory. Human chromosome 2 appears to be the result of two ancestral chromosomes fusing together, an event that shouldn't produce viable offspring but somehow did. The human brain tripled in size over a relatively short evolutionary period, an extraordinarily rapid change that some argue requires an explanation beyond natural selection. Ancient myths from around the world speak of gods interbreeding with humans. The Bible mentions the Nephilim, offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. Greek mythology is filled with demigods, children of deities and mortals. Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki creating hybrid beings. These stories are usually dismissed as myths explaining heroes and unusual individuals. But what if they preserve distorted memories of genetic intervention, of ancient peoples encountering beings with advanced biotechnology that modified human genetics? This is speculation, not evidence, but it's speculation that attempts to make sense of otherwise inexplicable myths that appear globally. The sudden emergence of civilization itself remains one of history's great mysteries. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers, creating stone tools that barely changed over millennia. Then, around 10,000 BC, everything changes. Agriculture appears in multiple locations around the world within a relatively short time span. Göbekli Tepe is constructed, pottery is invented, writing develops, cities arise. The transition from Stone Age to civilization occurs with remarkable speed. The standard explanation is climate change at the end of the Ice Age, but this doesn't explain the sophisticated knowledge that appears fully formed in early civilizations. The Sumerians, the earliest known civilization in Mesopotamia, emerge around 4000 BC with writing, mathematics, astronomy, law codes, and complex social organization already in place. There's no gradual development visible in the archaeological record. The Sumerians themselves credited their knowledge to the Anunnaki, gods who came from the sky and taught them. The same pattern appears in Egypt. The earliest Egyptian hieroglyphs are as sophisticated as later versions. There's no primitive stage, no learning period visible. Egyptian mathematics, architecture, and medicine appear fully developed at the beginning of their recorded history. It's as if someone gifted these civilizations with complete systems of knowledge. The mystery deepens when we examine ancient knowledge of astronomy. The ancient Babylonians tracked the planets with such precision that they could predict eclipses. They knew the synodic period of Venus to within a few minutes. They had calculated the length of the year more accurately than the Julian calendar would achieve thousands of years later. The ancient Chinese mapped the stars with great precision, dividing the sky into sections and tracking the movements of celestial bodies over decades and centuries. Ancient Polynesian navigators could sail thousands of miles across open ocean using only the stars, waves, and birds to guide them, a feat that requires intricate knowledge of astronomy, oceanography, and weather patterns. These are not the achievements of primitive peoples. These require sophisticated mathematics, long-term record-keeping, and theoretical frameworks for understanding the cosmos. Some ancient sites appear to be astronomical observatories, built to track celestial events with precision. Newgrange in Ireland, a passage tomb built around 3200 BC, features a roof box that allows sunlight to penetrate deep into the chamber only at sunrise on the winter solstice. The alignment is so precise that it requires detailed astronomical knowledge and careful engineering. The people who built Newgrange had no written language, no metal tools, yet they constructed a monument that functions as an astronomical instrument and has remained aligned for over 5,000 years. What drove them to such effort? What knowledge were they encoding in stone? The answer might lie in the nature of astronomical cycles themselves.
The precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, causes the position of stars to shift over time. A complete precessional cycle takes approximately 26,000 years. Ancient cultures seemed obsessed with this cycle. The Egyptians, the Maya, the Vedic astronomers of India all tracked and recorded precessional changes. Some researchers argue that megalithic sites around the world are part of a global system designed to preserve astronomical knowledge through catastrophes. If civilization can be destroyed by cosmic impacts, climate change, or other disasters, knowledge encoded in massive stone structures might survive when everything else is lost. Graham Hancock, a researcher and writer who has spent decades investigating these mysteries, proposes that the world's megalithic sites represent the remnants of a global maritime civilization that existed during the last ice age and was destroyed by cataclysm around 10,800 BC. The survivors, he suggests, traveled the world trying to preserve their knowledge by teaching less advanced peoples and building monuments that encode astronomical data. This theory, while controversial and rejected by mainstream archaeology, attempts to explain why similar structures, similar myths, and similar astronomical knowledge appear in widely separated cultures. It's a theory that demands more evidence than currently exists, but it's also a theory that fits certain patterns in the data that conventional explanations struggle to address. The stone spheres of Costa Rica present another enigma without satisfactory explanation. Over 300 stone spheres, ranging from a few centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter, have been found in the Dikis Delta and surrounding areas. The largest weigh up to 15 tons. Many are almost perfectly spherical, with deviations measured in millimeters. Creating a perfect sphere from granite using primitive tools is extraordinarily difficult. Modern sculptors would use specialized equipment, measuring devices, and templates. The ancient peoples who created these spheres supposedly had none of these things. The purpose of the spheres remains unknown. They were placed in alignment patterns that some interpret as astronomical or navigational markers, but no consensus exists. Some spheres were originally placed in specific geometric arrangements, but most have been moved from their original positions, destroying whatever information their placements might have conveyed. In the remote Easter Island, the massive Moai statues stare inland from their coastal platforms. Nearly 900 moai exist on the island, carved from volcanic tuff using stone tools. The largest completed moai weighs 82 tons. How a population estimated at just a few thousand people created, transported, and erected these massive statues remains debated. The traditional explanation is that they used log rollers and ropes to move the statues, but experiments attempting to replicate this method have had limited success. The islanders themselves said the moai walked to their locations, an enigmatic statement that might preserve memory of a technique we don't understand. Recent theories suggest the statues were rocked from side to side in a walking motion, but this still requires tremendous effort and coordination. What drove the islanders to such exertion? Why did they carve and erect nearly 1,000 massive statues on one of the most remote islands on Earth? The Rongo-Rongo script of Easter Island represents one of the few independent inventions of writing in human history. The script remains largely undeciphered despite decades of effort. It appears on wooden tablets, most of which were destroyed by missionaries who considered them pagan artifacts. Only a few dozen tablets survive. The script might encode the history of the islanders, their astronomical knowledge, or religious texts. We don't know, and we may never know if the script can't be deciphered. This is knowledge lost not to time, but to cultural destruction. A reminder that humanity has repeatedly destroyed its own heritage, burning libraries, smashing monuments, erasing the records of defeated cultures. How much have we lost?
What knowledge was contained in the Library of Alexandria, the Mayan codices burned by Spanish priests, the countless texts destroyed in wars and conquests throughout history? The Baghdad battery is not unique. Similar devices have been found at other ancient sites. If the ancients understood electrochemistry, what else did they understand? The knowledge required to create even simple electrical devices implies a framework of scientific thinking, experimentation, and theoretical understanding. We think of science as a product of the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution of the 17th century. But what if scientific thinking has much older roots that extend back into prehistory, visible in the astronomical precision of ancient observatories, the engineering sophistication of megalithic structures, the chemical knowledge implied by Damascus steel and Greek fire? Ancient medicine shows knowledge that seems ahead of its time. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, an Egyptian medical text dating to around 1600 BC, describes surgical techniques, anatomical observations, and treatments that demonstrate sophisticated medical knowledge. The text describes the brain and recognizes its importance in controlling the body, knowledge that wouldn't be widely accepted in Western medicine until the Renaissance. Ancient Indian texts describe surgical procedures, including cataract surgery, plastic surgery, and cesarean sections. The ancient Greeks developed humoral theory, which, while incorrect by modern standards, represented a systematic attempt to understand disease and health through natural causes rather than supernatural. Trepanation, the practice of drilling holes in the skull, was performed in ancient cultures worldwide, and many patients survived, as evidenced by healed bone around the trepanation holes. These were not primitive peoples blindly following superstition. They were experimenting, observing, developing systems of knowledge based on experience and reason. In ancient China, the Antikythera mechanism has a lesser-known parallel. The south-pointing chariot, described in Chinese texts from the 3rd century AD, was a mechanical device that used a differential gear system to keep a pointer aimed south no matter what the chariot's direction of travel. This is the same principle used in modern automotive differentials. The device served as a mechanical compass, working entirely through gears without magnetism. If the ancient Chinese could build such devices, what else could they build? What mechanisms have been lost because they were made of perishable materials like wood and fabric rather than durable bronze? The crystal skulls mystery emerged in the 19th and 20th centuries when several human skull sculptures made from clear or milky quartz appeared on the antiquities market. Sellers claimed they were ancient Mesoamerican artifacts with mystical properties. The most famous, the Mitchell-Hedges skull, was allegedly discovered at a Mayan ruin in Belize in the 1920s. The skull is anatomically accurate and carved against the natural grain of the crystal, which should make it impossible to create without shattering the quartz. Tests in the 1990s revealed that the skull was probably made with modern rotary tools, suggesting it's a 19th or 20th century creation. The romance of the crystal skulls faded with this revelation. Yet the debunking of these particular artifacts doesn't address the fact that ancient mines around the world show evidence of sophisticated engineering. The copper mines on Isle Royale in Lake Superior were worked by ancient peoples who extracted hundreds of millions of pounds of copper over thousands of years. The mines show advanced techniques, including the use of fire to heat the rock, followed by cold water to crack it, allowing easier extraction. Where did all this copper go? The amount extracted far exceeds what's been found in Native American artifacts. Some researchers suggest it was traded across the Atlantic to Bronze Age Europe, which would require transoceanic voyages long before Columbus. Evidence for such trade is circumstantial but intriguing. Bronze Age European civilizations needed copper, and sources in Europe couldn't supply the amounts they consumed.
Isotope analysis of some European bronze artifacts shows the copper came from sources not found in Europe. Could some of it have come from North America? The Copper Scroll, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in the 1950s, is unique among the scrolls. While the others are religious texts written on parchment or papyrus, the Copper Scroll is a list of locations written on copper sheets. The locations allegedly mark hiding places for massive quantities of gold and silver, treasures from the Second Temple in Jerusalem. Despite numerous attempts, none of the treasures described in the scroll have been found. Either the treasures were recovered in antiquity, or the scroll is a work of fiction, or the locations are described in a code we don't understand. The scroll remains one of archaeology's tantalizing mysteries, a map to a treasure that may or may not exist. Climate change at the end of the Ice Age was dramatic and rapid. Temperature shifts of 10 degrees or more occurred within decades. Sea levels rose over 300 feet. Coastlines vanished. Entire ecosystems transformed. Any civilizations occupying the fertile coastal plains during the Ice Age would have been inundated by rising seas. Their lands, their cities, their monuments, all drowned and buried under sediment. The continental shelves, now underwater, were once dry land, and that land would have been prime territory for human habitation. We've explored less than 5% of the ocean floor. What might lie beneath the sediment accumulated over 12,000 years? What cities might rest in the darkness of the deep ocean beyond the reach of all but the most sophisticated technology? Recent underwater discoveries have revealed surprising finds. Off the coast of India, sonar surveys have detected what appear to be massive stone structures at depths that indicate great age. Near Japan, the Yonaguni monument continues to be debated, with new features discovered as divers explore the site more thoroughly. In the Mediterranean, ancient shipwrecks have revealed artifacts that change our understanding of ancient trade and technology. Each discovery raises new questions. If ancient peoples were building stone structures in areas now underwater, how widespread were such constructions? How many remain undiscovered? The Bimini Road, discovered in waters near the Bahamas, consists of limestone blocks arranged in what some interpret as a road or wall. Mainstream geologists argue the blocks are natural beach rock, limestone formations that can create linear patterns through natural processes. But some researchers point to features that seem artificial: uniform block sizes, apparent tool marks, and blocks positioned at right angles to each other. The debate continues without resolution. Proving that ancient waterstone formations are artificial rather than natural is extraordinarily difficult. Nature can create shapes that look designed. Humans can build structures that look natural after millennia of erosion. The ambiguity makes certainty impossible. This uncertainty haunts all investigation into ancient mysteries. We want clear answers. We want to know what ancient peoples knew, how they built their monuments, why they created the structures that puzzle us. But the past doesn't easily yield its secrets. Evidence is incomplete. Sources are unreliable. Alternative explanations proliferate. For every mystery, mainstream archaeology offers conventional explanations that satisfy some but leave others questioning. For every conventional explanation, alternative researchers propose controversial theories that explain some evidence but ignore contradictions. The truth, as always, probably lies somewhere in the middle, in a recognition that ancient peoples were neither primitive savages nor recipients of alien technology, but humans like us, intelligent and creative, struggling to understand the world with the tools available to them, occasionally achieving things we find remarkable, sometimes preserving that knowledge, sometimes losing it to the churning chaos of history. We stand in the present, looking backward through a fog of time, trying to see clearly what happened in ages long past. The fog obscures details, distorts shapes, makes us uncertain whether what we're seeing is real or imagined. Some aspects of history are clear. We know that ancient peoples built the pyramids, that Stonehenge was erected by Neolithic communities, that the Maya developed sophisticated calendars. But the how and the why remain elusive. The questions multiply the deeper we dig. Each answer reveals new puzzles. Perhaps the greatest mystery is why we're so drawn to these questions. Why do we care about ancient civilizations and lost knowledge? Why do unsolved mysteries fascinate us? Perhaps it's because they remind us that we don't know everything, that the world still contains secrets, that reality is stranger and more complex than our current understanding allows. In an age where we can access vast amounts of information instantly, where we map genomes and explore Mars, the existence of unsolvable ancient mysteries humbles us. They stand as monuments not just to ancient achievements, but to the limits of human knowledge. The past is not dead and buried. It lives in the structures that survive, in the DNA we carry, in the myths we still tell. It influences the present in ways we don't always recognize. Our world is built on foundations laid thousands of years ago, foundations of knowledge and culture and technology accumulated over centuries and millennia. Some of that foundation is visible, traceable, understood. Some remains hidden, waiting to be discovered, and some may be lost forever, vanished into the darkness of time, leaving behind only questions, enigmas, and the tantalizing possibility that history is far richer and stranger than we dare to imagine. As we move forward into the future, perhaps we should occasionally look back, not with certainty, but with wonder. The ancient world has lessons to teach us if we're willing to listen. It reminds us that civilizations can fall, that knowledge can be lost, that nothing is permanent, not even the achievements we consider immortal. It challenges us to question our assumptions, to be humble about our understanding, to remain curious and open to possibilities we haven't considered. The mysteries of the past don't demand solutions. They demand attention, respect, and the acknowledgement that we live in a universe far more mysterious than our theories encompass. In the end, perhaps that's the real lesson of history's unsolved mysteries. The universe doesn't owe us answers, and the search itself, the questioning, the wondering, might be more valuable than any conclusion we could reach.